Hello everyone and welcome to my end of year review of all the non-fiction slash personal development books that I have read in 2024. I have most of the books here with me now, so I'll be able to show you what they look like. However, there's a few I don't have, so I'm going to start off with those books as I don't have them here, and then we will progress on to the books that I do have. So this will not be in the order of which ones I read. It will just be a random amalgamation of all the books that I have read this year. So some of them will be very well known authors or books that you will have heard of. Some of them will be completely new books that you haven't heard of, and I actually purposefully and intentionally did that. I wanted to read random books. So I think I definitely succeeded, but there are definitely some really definitely I'm saying definitely a lot books that you will have heard of here as well. Okay, so to start off, books that I do not have in my possession but I did read. The first one is one that you will all have potentially heard of the author, I am sure, at least, especially if you're interested in personal development. But it was Jay Shetty's book Think Like a Monk. And just give like a really quick run through of the books of what I thought. Personally, I think it was an interesting book to kind of get an insight into the life of a monk. And I liked he had kind of like it wasn't a personality quiz, but it was like to do your dharma, I think, of like what you're here to do or whatever. I found that quiz really good. Like I was like, oh, that's interesting, the result that I got from it. But the book itself is probably really good if you're really new to personal development or to looking into yourself. For me, I found it was okay. You know, it was fine. It was quite long. There was a lot in it. But again, it was interesting. It was an interesting read. Another book that I read this on my phone actually. So it was a kind of Kindle style version of a book, and that was 75 Hard by Andy Frisella. I read this after completing 75 Hard, so it was interesting to kind of get his insight into why he chose the different activities that he chose. Really easy read, really short read. Like if you do want to read it, it's really easy to read, so I would definitely recommend. But yeah, I think it would have been cool maybe to read it before doing 75 Hard or while I did it. But definitely it's not a prerequisite. Like you can do the challenge and you can complete the challenge without having read the book. So that is the second book. Another book that I read, I actually listened to it, and I listened to it twice, and I've ordered it like a physical copy from my library because I want to read it, is a book called Ultra Processed People. So I've heard people talking about this book. Basically it's two twins. One twin primarily wrote the book and everything, but he also has his twin in doing like interviews on the audio version of the book. They're both doctors. One lived in Boston, became obese. The author stayed in the UK, was not obese, and basically as they're both medical doctors, obviously they do a lot of like research and everything, so it's a very well thorough thought out version of like all of the different propaganda and different things going on in the food industry, and it's just really interesting. There's no definitive result at the end, but it's just like an overall learning from reading or listening to the whole book. I'm really excited to get it in my hands because I feel like there's a lot of like papers and studies that are referenced, but you're listening to it, like it's harder to kind of go back over things, whereas when you have it in front of you, you can kind of go back and like reread what you just read or see it in a different way. So I'm excited to get the physical version of it, but I did listen to it twice. But I definitely feel like there's a lot in that, like it's really thorough. Thank you so much. And then the last book that I do not have with me anymore, I gifted it to someone else, is a book called Mothership. It's by Ciara Heenan, who is an Irish author slash publisher. And the Mothership is a collection of stories from different mothers. I actually have authored with Ciara for the Mothership 2 and the Mothership 3. So I purchased the Mothership 1 to kind of just get a feel of like what other moms have written in the past. Each book is a different selection of authors and obviously different chapters. Even if it is the same author, the mom is gonna be talking about a different version of motherhood to her. I've got 2 young girls, as you can see, one of them is here. So that was really interesting, and the Mothership 2 and 3 will be out by the end of the year, so it's really exciting. Hello. So that is the final book that I don't have. Now, that book that Kira did called The Mothership is something called an anthology, which is where it's a combination of authors that come together and each one writes a chapter. And I did a few more anthologies this year. So 2 of them I'll just get through these ones first and then get into all of the other books. So you will not have heard probably of any of these, but I do have a whole stack of other books that we'll talk about. So 2 that my husband actually collaborated on. So one is called The Secrets of Successful Men, and one is called Relentless. So Relentless, it's male and female, and this one is all male authors. And what I do love about these books is every chapter is completely different. I might not relate to all the chapters, but there might be a chapter I don't relate to that you would relate to. But there's definitely like standout chapters for me in all of these kind of books that I've read. And I think it's really interesting just to get different perspectives, see that like everyone's different, but everyone also has like a theme that's kind of the same. Like it's a lot of things are like human and just universal. And but also just be like, wow, like some people went through mad stuff. Like there's Olympians that have written chapters in this. Like it's crazy. So you just never know what you're going to read when you read a book like this. And then the other one that I have, the final one I have, is a book called Monetize Your Message. And this is a book that I actually collaborated on in 2020. It was launched and released. And funnily enough, I was so embarrassed by doing it. I think it's like so vulnerable to like put pen to paper and to like actually write something. I was so embarrassed that I never read my chapter. So this year when I picked up this book, it was one of the first books I read. I think it was like the second book I read this year, which reminds me there's another one that I don't have, my first ever book. I have to tell you about that book because it's really good. But I read this first book that I'll tell you about in a moment, and then I read this, and I actually left my chapter till the end. I think my chapter is like near the start of the book. I read all of the other chapters first and then I read my chapter, and I'll tell you what, like there's nothing wrong with the other chapters of the book, but obviously I relate to my own chapter. I thought that my chapter was one of the best chapters in the book. I'm not saying it was the best, but one of the best chapters, and I was so proud of myself after reading this book. So this is a book, there's 21 authors, all female. Monetize Your Message, just how all of them, like their life story or whatever, and how they ended up in the business that they were in at the time. And this was just such a huge personal win for me because I nearly had the ick about this book and now I can claim it and love it, so I'm really happy about that. So those are all of the anthology books. One other book that I don't have with me at the moment, which I definitely want to shout out, is by an author called Robert Kiyosaki, who I love, and anyone that knows me knows that I love Robert Kiyosaki. I've met him, he's done videos mentioning us. Some people don't like Robert Kiyosaki. I love Robert Kiyosaki. But anyways, he wrote a book that's no longer in print. He did it years ago. We bought it on, I think, eBay or Amazon or something. Like, he had to get it second hand. And unfortunately I can't find it at the moment, which is worrying. You, Mommy. That is me. Yes, good job. Who's this, Bronze?
Daddy.
That's Daddy. Yes. So I'm a bit worried that I can't find the book, but sure, look, we'll find another copy if we have to. But it's a comic book that he wrote for children. So if you don't know, Robert Kiyosaki wrote a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Another book, Mommy.
Another book, yeah. He wrote a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he wrote like a host of other books after that, and a lot of training materials because he's been around for years, and some of it is still in production, some of it isn't. This is a comic book style book that he wrote specifically for kids. Too advanced for Madame here. Good job. But definitely something that she could read when she's maybe 8, 9, 10. the characters, it's all cartoons. The characters are young kids, and they're talking about like they want money to go on rides on a fair or something like that. So really interesting, really good. Concerned that I can't find it, but hopefully it turns up soon. Okay, so let's get into what other books that we have here. So near the end of the year, I got into a bit of leadership book. This is a book called Multipliers. It was
This one to the doggy shack.
the doggy. Yeah, we'll talk about that one soon. Multipliers. It's good
This
for
one to the
if you're in like a leadership position. It's how to get the best out of your people. But even if you're not in a leadership position, it's good. It talks about like how to make your boss a multiplier or your peers a multiplier, or even in your family life. It's an interesting book. I wasn't really in the head for like businessy.
This book finished and this.
I'm on maternity leave at the moment, so I'm not actually in work. So it was kind of like, oh, it's good. Like, would definitely read again at a future time. Would recommend.
Another book.
Okay, let's talk about the book with the doggy. Here's a book called How to Teach Your Dog Economics, or How to Teach Economics to Your Dog. A quirky introduction.
A cook is stuck into this blue one, into the money room, and this will get close.
Good job. Oh, careful. Look, falling apart. How to Teach Your Dog Economics. I thought it was it was like kind of,
this one.
I think there's another one like How to Teach Philosophy to Your Dog or something. It's like their first one. It's like a man and a woman, like husband, wife relationship. And they have a dog, and the husband is a philosopher, so he wrote the first book, How to Teach Philosophy to Your Dog, and then this is from the wife who works in finance, I think, and she the whole idea is that she's bringing the dog for walks, and the dog's name is Monty by memory, and she's teaching the dog kind of like basic concepts of economics, which I would recommend. It's a very easy read.
And stuck on the shoulders and research.
Good job. Can I have this one?
Yeah.
Another book that you may not have heard of is The Power of Small. A friend of mine wrote this book years ago, and I never read it.
Book and to the socket.
Study on that book. I never read it, so it was on my list of things to read. I feel like this year I really read books that have been on my mind to read for a long time. More of them will come. It's really good if you suffer with like panic or anxiety. The two authors, they're wives, they're both psychologists. They both have lived experience as well. And it is absolutely jam-packed. It's absolutely jam-packed with processes and ideas for things that you can do to reduce your anxiety. And again, they're both psychologists. They both run workshops called The Power of Small. And I'm glad to have read it, just to have read it, for sure. Next book. The last book I've read is Man's Search for Meaning. This is the second time reading this book, so I have read this before. Viktor Frankl, if you haven't heard, this is a very, very well-known book. He actually was a psychologist as well. And he was in the Nazi concentration camps, and he survived, and he talks about his lived experience in the concentration camps for most of the book. Careful now. And then for the end of it, he kind of just talks about his version of psychotherapy called logotherapy. Really, really, really good book, and I wanted to finish off the year with this book. In the same... The rest of the books are kind of same genre. So we have The Four Agreements, which again, very well-known book, has been on my mind to read for a long time. Really interesting. Would definitely read it again. It's based on I believe it's the Aztecs. Could be wrong on that, but basically the four agreements that they have to live a very good and happy life. The Practical Guide to Personal Freedom. Very easy to read. You show me?
I just don't know. I just like it. And my sister cute. I don't know. I just put it and press it.
And your sister's cute.
Yeah.
So very good book. If you haven't read it, would recommend. Again, easy to read.
Here this yellow book, a blue book, and a pop.
In a similar genre, I'll just put the sleeve of this book back on because Madame took it off. This is a book that I tried to begin a while ago, like years ago, and just did not like the look of it, so I just put it back down. But everyone talks about this book, The Secret. I just personally, I don't like the text. I don't like the design of the book. It's very disjointed for me. It does not suit my brain. But I did read it. There was a couple of bits in it. I'm all about the law of attraction in theory and in general. So yeah, it was good. There was definitely a few things. I like reading these books and letting them just percolate in my brain. I don't need to have like specific tangibles that I got from each book. We're nearly finished. But I really enjoyed the fact that I got this book read because I had a lot of resistance to it for a long time. Speaking of resistance and the law of attraction, second last book I believe.
Yes, book.
Is Ask and It Is Given by Abraham Hicks.
Mommy. I just saw this book.
It's purple?
Yeah, I just said it.
Say Ask and It Is Given.
I said then.
Good job.
I just said it.
So Abraham Hicks.
So I just said this another book.
If you know The Secret, you probably know who Abraham Hicks is, or Esther Hicks and Jerry Hicks. I have listened to hours of Abraham's content. Hours. Whether you like Abraham or not, you think it's a hoax, or you think it's real, or you think it's demonic, or whatever you think it is. I just think that there's some like really good learning, and the information just makes sense. So I've wanted to read this, but all the content that I've consumed of Abraham Hicks has been like 15-20 minutes YouTube videos. So I was like, how is this going to translate into a book? And just for years I put it off. I really hope you can hear me over Madame here. However,
Papa took it on the short and carries it.
Anyways, but this was my favorite book of all the books. Was my favorite. There's some, I think it's 20 processes at the back. Definitely read this again. Would definitely do the processes at the back. There's some things that still stick with my head, but like it is just so easy to read. Their content in general is just so easy to consume. And if you have this on your shelf, I do recommend picking it out. Last book, bros. And then the final last one, which is one that you will know as well, is this one. What does it say? Chicken. Say chicken.
Chicken.
Soup.
For the
Say for the
women's
soul. Yeah, chicken soup for the women's soul. Jack Canfield. I think everyone's heard of Chicken Soup for the Soul. I've never read it. I have heard Jack Canfield speak. I went to an event called the Pendulum Summit years ago. Didn't really know who any of these people were. But anyways, my mother-in-law had this book, so I picked it up. And it was so easy because it's just all really short stories. Like some of them are like 1 page long. From women from years ago. But like it's subdivided into like different parts, so it could be love, motherhood, grief, whatever. And it's just like stories from women that fit into those themes. And yeah, I just thought it was like a very good feel-good book that I would also recommend. But I haven't read regular Chicken Soup for the Soul, and I know there's other versions of it as well. Just loads of versions. So that is it. That is all the books. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 physical books plus 4 or 5 non-physical. So say 15 personal development books that I read this year. It's been really amazing. I'd read at least 10 pages every day. I also, on top of that, listened physically, like audio, many non-fiction books, fiction books, so novels and stuff like that. So I've never listened to fiction before, so this is the first year that I've listened to a fiction book. And I've also been reading fiction books as well, so I've read throughout the year a lot more than these 15.
Bubble gum popped, and this is my face. So
you have to come over here. They can't see you. Okay, my husband's coming. I have to go. It's like a madhouse here. Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye. Sorry, I was just saying something there. So I've read all these books, and although nothing specific came from that, and I was like, that's a great idea. I'm going to do this thing. Hold on a second. Let me just finish this one thing, okay? As I said, I have contributed to 2 other like mothership books, so that's really exciting. So I've co-authored in 2 different books, and I've also created a pregnancy journal this year, which is really cool. So that's a business that I'm going to be launching in the new year. Yeah, it's just been an incredible year, and I'm not saying that it's down to books, but I'm not saying that it's not down to the books either. I'm sure they definitely help just kind of get my brain moving and the juices flowing.
So this one popped into the feather.
Do you want to smile at the camera and say bye?
Bye.
See you next time, guys.